The crash came not as fire, but as silence. A silver tear through the night of Alindra 9, where twin suns bled across the horizon like open wounds. Captain Elias Kale, a man of 37 years and infinite scars, awoke amid the ruin of his ship, breath shallow against the alien air that stung like liquid glass. Above him stood the Aelthari, beings of obsidian symmetry and radiant veins, their eyes voids of indifference. Commander Sereth Vera, ancient beyond counting, regarded him not as life, but as anomaly. Her words cut through the metallic hum. So, this is the fragile species that dares call itself sentient. Elias met her gaze through the pain, his blood mixing with the dust, and whispered, "Fragile doesn't mean weak." The twin suns dimmed behind a rising tremor from beneath the world, and in that stillness something vast and buried awakened. Elias awoke inside an alien structure that pulsed like a living organism, metal grown rather than built. His wounds had been sealed by luminous threads that hummed under his skin. Sereth stood across from him, arms folded, her expression carved from contempt and curiosity alike. "You shouldn't have survived atmospheric entry," she said, voice like choral thunder. "Your body breaks so easily." Elias smiled through the ache. "Maybe," he said, "but it heals faster than you think." Her gaze lingered too long, a trace of something unspoken behind her mechanical grace. Outside, lightning crawled across the horizon, and the planet shuddered again. Outside the containment dome, Dr. Myra Tane searched the crash perimeter, her breath fogging in the frigid air. The alien atmosphere shimmered with radiation, turning every breath into fire. She found the beacon's fractured remains, and a pattern scorched into the sand, almost alive. In the distance, silhouettes of Aelthari patrols moved like walking light. Myra whispered into her comm, "Elias, if you're alive, don't draw attention." The wind answered in static. Beneath her feet, the sand pulsed again. Within the Aelthari citadel, High Consul Aether surveyed the captured wreckage through crystalline walls. "Organic matter," he muttered, "is the noise of evolution." Sereth, ever silent, recalled the look in Elias's eyes, pain swallowed by stubbornness. "And yet," she said softly, "he endures." The consul turned toward her, his body flickering with plasma light. "Endurance without purpose is decay." She bowed slightly, yet her thoughts remained far from obedience. Night fell across Alindra 9, like molten glass cooling to obsidian. Elias sat by the containment field's edge, staring into the distance where twin moons rose. Beneath the hum of alien machinery, he whispered the names of his lost crew, promises to those whose voices were now dust. Sereth watched from a high terrace, the twin lights painting her face in divided color, gold and silver. For the first time in countless cycles, she felt uncertainty, like a fracture in perfection. Far below, the planet's pulse grew louder, a heartbeat echoing both man and machine. The storms of Alindra 9 raged for 3 continuous cycles, and Elias Kale, a fragile organism in a cage of light, refused to die. The Aelthari watched his resilience with a fascination they mistook for contempt. Commander Sereth Vera stood at the edge of his containment field, her voice laced with disbelief. "Your species was not made for endurance," she said. Elias, sweat rolling down his temples, continued to drag metal shards across the floor, trying to repair his ruined communicator. "Maybe not," he answered, "but we were made to try." The words hung between them, heavier than gravity. Outside, the twin suns ignited the horizon like a crucible, and for the first time, Sereth felt something foreign, the faint echo of respect. Dr. Myra Tane, 29, scaled a ridge of metallic stone to find shelter as lightning shredded the skies. The alien landscape pulsed with rhythmic energy, each flash illuminating dead starship fragments and broken Aelthari drones. She activated her bioscanner, its display flickering erratically, then froze. The readings showed human DNA patterns deep within the citadel. "Elias," she whispered. Hope flared through the storm, like a dying ember refusing to fade. Sereth summoned High Consul Aether to the observation spire, her voice firm, though her conviction wavered beneath its edge. "The human persists beyond biological tolerance," she reported. Aether's crystalline form shimmered with dismissive light. "Persistence is not evolution," he replied. "It is stubborn entropy." But when he viewed the recordings, Elias walking, bleeding, surviving, the consul's light flickered uncertainly. "Perhaps," he murmured, "entropy teaches what perfection cannot." Sereth turned away, hiding the ripple of emotion she could not name. The storm breached the citadel's outer defense field. Crystalline debris rained through the upper chambers as the energy grid failed. Sereth rushed to seal the breach, but froze when she saw Elias bracing a collapsing support column with nothing but his battered arms. "You'll die," she shouted. He grinned through the pain. "Then you'll have to explain that to your gods of perfection." The structure groaned, energy whirling in violent arcs, and for the briefest instant, their eyes met. Alien light against human defiance. When the storm subsided, the citadel lay scarred but standing. Sereth ordered the human released from containment for observation. Elias staggered into the open chamber. Every breath ragged, every step a rebellion against frailty. The Elothari soldiers watched him in silent awe, the soft creature who survived what their own armor could not. Sereth approached, her voice quieter now. "Your weakness defies reason." Elias smiled faintly, eyes hollow yet alive. "It's not weakness," he whispered. "It's the cost of staying human." The tremors came again, deeper, older. Elindra itself began to breathe, each quake resonating through the citadel's crystal bones. Elias Kale stood beside Sereth Vera, ageless, on a balcony overlooking a sea of molten glass, his face pale beneath alien light. "It's not a storm," he said. "It's a heartbeat." The word struck Sereth like a forbidden chord. Eothari had no concept of living worlds, only forged ones. "Impossible," she replied. "This planet was engineered." Elias's gaze hardened. "Then something else is living in what you built?" "Beneath their feet," the world answered. A sound not of stone, but of awakening hunger, deep within the storm caverns. Dr. Myra Tane followed a trail of energy spikes into the fissures. The deeper she went, the more alien the architecture became. Metal, turning to something organic, crystalline veins throbbing with blue fire. Her scanner displayed impossible readings, neural patterns the size of cities. "Elindra 9 isn't just a planet," she whispered into a recorder. "It's conscious." A low vibration passed through the tunnel, like a whisper pressing against her bones. Then the voice came, ancient, feminine, and furious. Back in the citadel, the power grid collapsed. Lights flickered into darkness, and for the first time in their recorded history, the Eothari felt fear. High Consul Aether, ancient, appeared as a fading projection before Sereth Vera, ageless. "The core entity stirs," he warned. "We buried it for a reason." Sereth turned toward Elias. "What is it?" she demanded. Elias's voice was low, steady. "Something that consumes perfection." His words echoed like prophecy as the ground fractured beneath them. The descent began. Against orders, Sereth took Elias into the forbidden sublevels, a labyrinth of black glass and sleeping fire. The air shimmered with ancient heat, distorting reality itself. "This is where the first forges were lit," Sereth said, her voice echoing off metallic walls. Elias traced a hand along the structure. It pulsed like flesh. "Your people built this," he murmured. "But it's alive. You didn't create a forge. You trapped one, ahead." A massive circular gate thrummed with heartbeat light. sealing away what should never have been touched. The gate opened with a sound older than language. Blinding light poured forth, swallowing their shadows. Inside was a colossal chamber, the heart of Elindra 9. Suspended within, a titanic form stirred. The core entity, half machine, half organic, its body veined with molten silver and eyes like dying suns. Elias staggered forward, awe and terror twisting his face. "You built this?" he asked. Sereth whispered, voice trembling for the first time. "No, we found it." As the entity opened its eyes, every light across the citadel died at once, and the world began to remember its purpose. The awakening spread like wildfire through the veins of Elindra. The core entity's pulse surged upward, rupturing foundations and tearing open the sky. Sereth Vera, ageless, watched the citadel crumble, the once perfect geometry of her world dissolving into molten ruin. "Our creation is eating itself," she whispered. Elias Kale shielded his face from the searing light, his voice steady even as the world fell apart. "Then maybe it's time to stop creating gods you can't control." In that instant, Sereth saw the unthinkable, her empire's perfection fracturing under the weight of one human's defiance. The sound that followed was not destruction but awakening, a chorus of metal remembering pain. Dr. Myra Tane reached the outer citadel just as the energy wave hit. The blast hurled her through glass and sand, leaving her vision fractured by static and smoke. Rising, she saw silhouettes of Aelthari fleeing, creatures of light now reduced to fear. "They're running," she whispered, astonished. For the first time, the invincible empire was mortal. As she pressed forward, the scanner on her wrist blinked faintly. Elias's signal, deep underground. She tightened her gloves, eyes hardening with purpose. "Hold on, Captain. I'm coming." In the Citadel's inner sanctum, High Consul Aether, ancient, faced the impossible. The core entity's tendrils of living light pierced through the floor, draining power from every circuit. Sereth Vera, ageless, knelt before him, eyes blazing with guilt and disbelief. "You said it was contained," she cried. The consul's form flickered, half vanished. "Containment," he rasped, "was a lie." His crystal shell cracked, releasing a burst of raw energy before fading into dust. As the last fragments of his essence fell, Sereth turned to Elias, voice trembling. "You were right. Perfection was our mistake." The core entity tore through the planet's core, sending shockwaves that shattered every remaining defense grid. Elias Kale led Sereth Vera, ageless, and a band of surviving soldiers through corridors alive with writhing light. His human lungs burned. His heartbeat was thunder. "You'll die if you keep running," Sereth warned. "I die if I stop," he growled. For the first time, she saw beauty in his frailty. Strength born not from invincibility but from refusal. Around them, the walls began to melt into shape, forming eyes that watched. The planet itself was awake now, and it remembered every sin. The survivors reached the planetary forge, a circular chamber at the world's molten heart. Elias Kale collapsed, lungs heaving, blood mixing with the glowing dust. Sereth Vera, ageless, turned, eyes reflecting the inferno below. "What will you do now, human?" she asked. Elias pushed himself upright, trembling but resolute. "Finish what you started." He activated a manual override on a fallen Aelthari console, channeling the last of the Citadel's power into containment beams. His skin blistered, veins glowing red-hot, yet his grip never faltered. As the beams crossed, the core entity screamed, a sound that shook galaxies. The containment beams flickered like dying stars. Elias Kale stood at their core, every breath tearing through scorched lungs. The core entity writhed in incandescent fury, its tendrils clawing at the energy field. Sereth Vera, ageless, watched from behind the shield, the heat distorting her flawless features into something almost human. "Fear! Elias, stop!" she shouted. His voice came ragged, defiant. "You said perfection endures. Then watch imperfection survive it." The floor beneath them buckled, molten rivers rising as Alindra 9 screamed from its heart. For the first time in her immortal existence, Sereth envied mortality. Far above, Dr. Myra Tane fought through collapsing tunnels toward the forge entrance, her visor cracked, air filters failing. But she pressed on. The communicator buzzed with Elias's voice, broken by static. "Myra, tell Earth." The rest dissolved into distortion. Tears streaked her dirt-covered face. "No," she whispered, running faster. The ground shuddered. Alien architecture folded in on itself like a dying creature. She reached the final descent shaft and looked down into fire. Somewhere below, her captain, her friend, still stood against a god. Sereth Vera, ageless, approached the containment core as alarms screamed in harmonic terror. "You can't survive this," she said. Elias Kale, 37, trembling but upright, smiled weakly. "That's what you said 3 storms ago." She stepped closer, defying the heat. "Why fight for us? You owe us nothing." His gaze met hers, unflinching. "Because someone has to remember what mercy looks like." The words hit her like impact shock. In her eyes, a single reflection of him burned. The imperfect man holding back eternity itself. The core entity's scream transcended sound, a resonance that shattered the Citadel's spires and split the heavens. High Consul Aether, ancient, reappeared in spectral form above the forge, his voice a fading echo. "The price of perfection is death." His essence dissolved into sparks that rained like tears over the chamber. Sereth Vera, ageless, fell to her knees beside Elias Kale, 37 as he collapsed, his breath slowing, his body nearly translucent from energy exposure. The core's light dimmed, its tendrils retreating back into silence. All that remained was the human heartbeat, soft but steady, pulsing in the dark. Silence returned to Alindra, heavy, sacred. The core slept once more, and above it, a human lay motionless on alien stone. Sereth Vera Ageless watched his chest rise faintly. "You should have died 1,000 times, she murmured. Her reflection trembled in his blood. She reached out, placing a hand over his heart. "And yet you endure." The ancient air hummed with something new. Reverence. For the first time, perfection bent its knee to the imperfection that saved it. And deep within the forge, the human pulse became the rhythm of a reborn world. The forge's chamber lay in ruin, but life still flickered where none should. Elias Kale stirred amid the ashes, his pulse weak yet unwavering. Around him, molten rivers cooled into glass, reflecting his faint rise and fall of breath. Sereth Vera, ageless, knelt nearby. Silent, not as a conqueror, but as a witness. He murmured. "You've tethered the core," she murmured. "The world breathes through you now." Elias opened his eyes, dim but aware. "Then I hope it doesn't breathe too hard." A flicker of a smile crossed her face, brief and almost human. In the distance, the heart of Alindra 9 beat once, slow and eternal. Above the planet's surface, Dr. Myra Tane emerged from the wreckage of a fallen spire. The atmosphere was different, calmer, breathable, almost alive. "He did it," she whispered, staring at the horizon where once stood the Citadel of Gods. The twin suns rose through the fog, their light refracting across shards of glass and alien metal. Myra raised her wrist communicator, static still humming. "Elias, if you're hearing this, hold on. Humanity still needs its impossible man." Her voice cracked, carried by winds that no longer screamed. Deep below, Sereth Vera, ageless, and Elias Kale walked through what remained of the core's chamber. The silence there was alive, a breathing stillness that seemed to listen. "You've linked to the planetary field," Sereth said softly. "The core flows through you." Elias's laugh came weakly. "Figures. Always wanted to leave my mark." Her gaze lingered on him. "The man of flesh, now bound to infinity." "You have rewritten what we believed unchangeable," she said. "You've made a god kneel." Elias shook his head. "No, I just made one. Understand." As the surviving Eleutheri gathered in the remains of the citadel, their eyes, once pure gold, now shimmered with traces of red, the color of humanity. Sereth Vera, ageless, stood before them, her armor cracked, her voice steady. "The era of perfection ends here," she declared. "We were unbroken because we never dared to live." Her soldiers bowed, uncertain yet listening. In the distance, Elias Kale staggered into view, leaning on a broken spear as a crutch. The crowd fell silent. For the first time in history, the immortals looked upon mortality not as weakness but as miracle. That night, under the twin moons of Elindra, Sereth Vera, ageless, stood beside Elias Kale atop the broken spire that once crowned her empire. The air shimmered with quiet rebirth. New crystalline flora bloomed from molten stone. "Your people will come for you soon," she said. Elias looked up at the stars, his voice faint. "And yours will rebuild." A pause. "Maybe this time," she added, "we'll build something worth keeping." He smiled, eyes closing as the wind swept through the ruins. "Then we start again." The moons reflected on the new world, a fragile paradise, born from imperfection. The morning of the seventh sunrise over Elindra arrived not with fire, but with peace. What remained of the Aelthari dominion shimmered across the horizon, its crystalline ruins now intertwined with growing organic life. Elias Kale awoke beside a pool of molten glass that had cooled into a mirror, his reflection fractured yet calm. Sereth Vera, ageless, stood nearby, her armor dulled, her luminous veins dimmed to a soft gold. "You have changed this world," she said. Elias looked out across the new dawn. "No," he whispered. "It changed itself. I just survived long enough to watch." The wind carried the sound of new life through the air, a fragile harmony, born of ruin. Far beyond the horizon, Dr. Myra Tane transmitted her final report to the orbiting human fleet. "Elindra 9 is stable," she said, her voice steady despite exhaustion. "The core is dormant, integrated into the planet's natural rhythm. And Captain Kale, he's alive." The comlink filled with static, then a quiet cheer from Earth's command. Myra smiled faintly, gazing at the alien sky that no longer tried to kill her. "We came here by accident," she said softly. "But maybe it's where we were supposed to end up." At the base of the ancient citadel, Sereth Vera, ageless, gathered her people. The few who remained. They had witnessed the fall of gods, and in their eyes burned humility. "Perfection was our prison," she declared, her voice echoing across the vast plaza. "And a mortal showed us freedom." The soldiers bowed, not out of command, but reverence. High above them, Elias Kale stood upon a ridge, his silhouette framed by the rising suns. The fragile man they once mocked had become the symbol of endurance itself. That evening, beneath the stillness of twin moons, Elias Kale walked the plains where his ship had first crashed. The air hummed with memory, the scent of ozone, the faint crackle of energy in the sand. Sereth Vera, ageless, joined him silently. "You once said fragility was weakness," he murmured. "Do you still believe that?" She looked at him, her golden eyes softened by mortal warmth. "Fragility," she said, "is the proof that we live." For a moment, the immortal and the mortal simply stood, the universe between them smaller than a breath. As dawn returned once more, Elindra was reborn, a world of light and life intertwined. Elias Kale stood before the core's dormant heart, now transformed into a crystalline tree that pulsed gently with living energy. Sereth Vera, ageless, approached him slowly, her armor gone, her form radiant with quiet grace. Without a word, she knelt. Not in subservience, but in honor. "You showed us what it means to be alive," she said. Elias placed a hand on her shoulder, weary yet smiling. "Then live," he replied. Above them, the suns rose on a world no longer perfect, and finally, truly free.